What sort of speeds were we talking? So we've got obviously we've got some images on the screen for people to have a look at this. When you spotted it, so it was remaining still for quite a while, and then when you said it sort of left, did it shoot off? Was it at speed?
And then that was the big talk on the base. That was in December of '80 in Rendlesham Forest, which our base was almost surrounded by Rendlesham Forest.
You were there at the time, is that right? So when it happened, you were there, as in
Yes,
you were on the base.
yes. I volunteered for a new unit that was opening there. It was in JSOC, in the Joint Special Operations Command.
Does the DOE currently work with JSOC in order to handle security measures?
We work with all of the security entities.
Do you guys work with JSOC? Yes or no?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I'm not putting it together that in my mind, I don't think that I've had a parachute accident. I don't know what it is. My body's there and I'm surrounded by a light.
But the last time we spoke, you told us an amazing story about the RNLI. Would you mind just touching back on that? Because I love that.
The following is a conversation with Scott Gearen. Now, before I get into the full introduction to that interview, I just want to give a massive shout out to Jeff Nuccetelli. Now, Jeff is an awesome dude. We've become good friends and we've talked a lot behind the scenes, and he's just an awesome guy. We interviewed him not that long ago over the Vandenbreg Red Square incident that he was at the time, and he gave us a lot of context around that case. If you haven't seen that one yet, check out that video and I'll pop the link in the description. So, the following is a conversation with Scott Gearen. Scott is a former Air Force parachute jumper, or PJ, who served in elite units like JSOC and the 24th Special Tactics Squadron, taking part in critical rescue missions worldwide. Despite surviving a harrowing 13,000-foot parachute accident, he went on to train future PJs, lead rescue teams during Desert Storm, and serve in conflicts across the globe, with an extraordinary career spanning the Air Force, the State Department, and Homeland Security. His story is one of resilience and dedication. He's also credited as the role model for the legend that is David Goggins, and has performed as a motivational speaker, sharing his story and encouraging others to pick themselves up and achieve what they desire. Scott has also had some incredible experiences with strange phenomena and captured some awesome footage, which we will share with you today, from Panama City Beach, Florida. Some of the footage has been enhanced and cleaned up by our in-house video tech, Peter Osborne, and we'll share that with you in this video too. So, without further ado, the following is a conversation with Scott Gearen. Thanks so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And I don't know if you can see in the background now, I was having a good read through last night, preparing. Let me get that on
Oh,
screen actually.
awesome.
Hang on, hang
Awesome.
on.
That's
So this is Scott's book, Hiding in Plain Sight. We'll talk about this case a bit later, I think. If it's okay, I'd like to jump in and just get an idea of where your interest in the strange phenomena, shall we say, sort of started. If you can trace it back to early childhood, and then we'll perhaps get into your career, if that's okay, and some of your later sightings. So is that all right if we
okay.
sort of jump into childhood?
I guess at an early age, with the things that happen like that, a bad dream, a nightmare, the Hat Man, I didn't realize that that was something that was strange to me. It was just, well, I had a bad dream. And then, like I said, I didn't even realize that the Hat Man was something that other people talked about or knew about until within the last couple of years on Twitter and now X, reading what other people had experienced and listening to them tell their stories. And for me, that was certainly looking back on it now. I say, yeah, that was something that was weird. Maybe it was not just an ordinary nightmare dream. But so many other people are having the same thing. And in the house, it was a small block house in Florida, um, where the bedrooms went down a hallway. There was bedrooms on each side, and I was in my bedroom. I was about 6 years old, and going to bed, and I don't remember what state of sleep I was in, but it was kind of a sleepy state. But suddenly, I realized that I could hear the footsteps coming down the hall, and I knew that they were coming to get me, whoever it was. And they stopped at the door, and I look over my shoulder, and there's this figure, large man figure. All I see is his outline in a dark shade, because there's a low light in the background, and he has a hat on, the old style that it was. And I look back over my shoulder to kind of ball up in a fetal position, and scared, because I know he's there for me. And then that was the last thing I remembered. But it was something that I carried through my life, as I would think about it from time to time. It's just, wow, that was quite the nightmare to still remember that. And then, like I say, just in the last couple of years, to think, well, maybe that's so odd that there's so many people out here that have that experience. So that at that time, I was probably about 6 years old. So move forward a couple of years, 9, 10 years old. It was dark in the evening, and play outside with the neighborhood kids in the neighborhood, and suddenly, as a group, I don't remember who noticed it, but there was this large green circular object in the air above us, and everybody was like, "Wow, what is that?" Oh, it scared everybody, and everybody ran to their respective homes. I was too scared to go back outside and say, "Hey, what is that? What's going on with it?" But run to the kitchen drawers and think I'm gonna have to get a knife to protect myself. Why I was scared, I don't know. But so we're trying to find out what it is and tell them, parents and everybody. And the next day, it's in the news that there was some type of event, experiment, or something going on from one of the Air Force bases nearby, MacDill Air Force Base, which was, I don't know, probably 15, 20 miles away. So that was childhood. Don't really remember anything other peculiar from that point on.
At what age did you join the military, and what kind of? Let's jump into your military career then. Where did that start? What age, and
Yeah.
what was the first? What was your motivation for joining the military?
So I graduated high school, went to a local junior college, um, spent more time on the beach than in class. So it wasn't something I was really, really wanting to do, was sit in class. But I didn't have a lot of direction. I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to go in life. Just wanted to exercise, lift weights, and go to the beach was for the most part. And that was a couple of years after high school, and to be like 19, 20 years old. And one of my good friends, like, "Hey man, we should go see a recruiter, see an Air Force recruiter. We'll get to see the world, and it'll be exciting." And I thought, man, that's a good idea. So ended up going down to the recruiter, and Air Force recruiter, and talking to him and finding out about a job called Pararescue. And saw a guy, they had a little video, guy suited up in a scuba gear and scuba tanks, and jumped out of a C-130 and landed in the water. I don't know what body of water it was, landed in the water, and had a little life raft that he opened up with a CO2 and climbed in it. And I stopped the video and said, "Yep, that's what I want to do." So I joined the Air Force and went through almost 2 years of training. And then my first assignment was to Woodbridge. So I got to Woodbridge, Royal Air Force Base Woodbridge in England, Suffolk County, in February of 1980. And so there was things going on there. We were training all the time, different places, supporting exercises. And then one day the big talk was, "Did you see the UFOs?" And like, I didn't see any UFOs. We don't have UFOs. So, and then that was the big talk on the base. That was in December of 80. And Rendlesham Forest, which our base was almost surrounded by Rendlesham Forest. And where our unit was, you could come on the base and go through the housing area and the shopping area, and you go out towards the flight line, and go down almost to the end of the flight line where our section was. And we would always, come in for our morning exercise and jump over the fence and run through Rendlesham Forest. They actually had a little house out there, kind of a duplex, and guys I worked with lived out in Rendlesham Forest. We were out there all the time for the parties at their houses or whatever, and wasn't much else out there at that time. There was no exhibits, no UFO exhibits, none of that, the trails and stuff. I never saw anybody out there. Um, so that was kind of an interesting thing to know. Looking back, say, well, I was pretty close to that. Something happened, and then there's a lot of discussion about the lighthouse, and people try to determine what it was. And we used to do water jumps. We'd jump out of the 130s and helicopters out into the North Sea, and we would have to where we'd put our boat in or where we'd come out at. We could see the lighthouse from there when we were down on the coastline, but all the times I was in Rendlesham Forest, walking, running, exercises, middle of the night, all night long, walking through the forest, I never saw the lighthouse. So maybe I wasn't in the exact right spot, but I know I spent a lot of time in Rendlesham Forest, and from there I never saw the lighthouse. So, so that was 1980. Stayed there a couple more years. I left there. I went to Kirtland Air Force Base for an instructor position.
Scott, before we move on to next, well, let's jump back into Rendlesham again, just because it is such a fascinating case. So you were there at the time, is that right? So when it happened, you were there,
Yes.
as in you were on the base.
Yes.
Oh.
And there was talk. I remember everybody talking about it, and it was in the news and local news. And it was just a lot of talk. But I guess I was not really. It didn't affect me the way it would now. It was, well, I'm going to be out there looking, day and night. But at the time, I was like, okay, UFOs, okay. But I think as kind of childhood, getting back to childhood, growing up with television stories, that you see, you're kind of introduced to it. So it's kind of like, okay, it's going to be, like the television show, My Favorite Martian. I used to watch that every week where, a man from Mars and his spacecraft crashed on Earth and hit out with a friendly man and fixed his spaceship in the garage. And, one day he was going to take off again, or, Lost in Space or Dream Genie, all these television shows as a kid. There's like, that just seems normal that there's going to be other things in the world or in the universe than just humans. So I guess my point was that I didn't give it a lot of credence that, oh man, it's a spaceship, I'm going to go see it. It was just, okay, it happened, and there's a lot of talk about it, but I didn't see it. Probably ran through those spots, but didn't see it.
Did you notice a lot of people sort of coming and going? Because I know that they said that Air Force OSI were there afterwards, and I don't know whether that's something that you would have noticed. I'm sure it was a busy base with all those A-10s coming and going and stuff. But
No, I guess that really was not really something I was alert to or paying attention to. I say back then, I just, the UFO didn't strike me the same way it would today. But it was, oh, that's something there, that's what, 40 years ago, to say, man, in 40 years, they're going to be talking about this event as a major encounter. So, but no, I didn't notice a lot of other activity. I guess they did it, but it wasn't like it was out in the forest. So if you're on the base, you're not seeing what's going on out there unless you're out there. So, and the LEs, the law enforcement and security police that were out there, they were back in their units, being debriefed in their interviews. My friend Sabrina that I mentioned to you, Sabrina Robb, who was a security police in her first part of her career, and then got commissioned to become a launch control officer in the nukes. She talks to guys that were there on site. She's good friends with them, talks to them quite often, and gets their firsthand feelings and what they felt about it. John Pennington, that put his hand on it, so
So talk us through then, because it's not an everyday guy's job that you've done. So what's going through your mind to jump out of a perfectly good aeroplane into the sea somewhere, and what would that entail on a day-to-day basis for you?
Well, I think if, at that point in my career was a lot different from the very first jump where you got more fear, you're the unknown, you don't know what's going to happen. In my mind, I wanted to do it. I wanted to go to jump school and do this job. And so I rationalized. It's like, listen to the instructors. They're telling you what to do. And thousands and thousands of people have already done this. And just do what they tell you, and you're going to be all right. So, you kind of block out some other things that are going on. And it's like you just take a big breath, you suck it up, and you just go do it. It's just like opening the door and jumping out. So now that was at Fort Benning, the first jump school I went to, and we get like I don't know how many. I don't remember exactly. I think you have to graduate with about 5 parachute jumps and in the daytime and 1 nighttime jump, and then you get through. Well, even though that takes 3 weeks of training, you're you're not getting a whole lot of jumps because you got like 3 phases, your ground phase, and you're going through all the techniques and emergency procedures. And second week was the tower week. They had a big 250-foot tower they would take you up on and drop you off with a parachute. And then the last week was your jump week. And you get through there, you get through. Then from my training, I didn't go right back to a unit. We went on into what's called the pipeline, which is a lot of different training courses that you would go through until you finally graduate and go to your base. So we went to several other training courses, scuba school, survival school, different things. And then we ended up at Kirtland Air Force Base, which is kind of the finishing school. And then we did more jumping or parachute jumping, taught us how to do scuba jumps. We used to wear scuba tanks on our back and then put a parachute on top of the scuba tanks. And some of that went back to NASA days because Air Force is primarily responsible for recovery of those capsules. And you jumping into the ocean, learning how to jump to a moving target. It's a lot different than just jumping to a target on the ground. As the ocean, that's moving. You got the currents and you got the wind. And then we also learned how to land into trees. So that was quite scary, jumping into large trees in a forest. And some of that goes back to crossover with some techniques of the fire jumpers and the things they did. But, we'd wear a suit, like a nylon suit, and it would have foam padding in certain areas and a big nylon tubing in your pocket so you could rappel out of the tree. And we'd go to a forest, and the safest place to land was pretty much in the top of the tree. You don't want to crash through and have a broken parachute and just crash through. So you wanted to land and get a good hang up in the tree. So they've since have stopped doing that type of training because there were a lot of people got injured. Every class guys were getting injured, and some of them serious enough to where they couldn't continue in training. Some of them with broken arm or broken leg, and they could able to heal and then get back in training. But so anyway, I guess getting to the point from all the other jumping and then finally getting to the unit. So you're going to go and you're going to suit up with all of your gear. And that's a lot of gear. Sometimes we'd wear a wetsuit, sometimes we wear a dry suit, and you got your parachutes, you got your tanks, you got your scuba gear, you might have a medical bag or something. And it wasn't that big a deal. Scary to be scared of, it was just training. You knew what to do, you were trained for it, and you did it. Now, a nighttime jump with all that gear into the ocean added another element of fear to it, but it was always you learn and you're going to get fear in a lot of different things that you do in this job, because it is the military and it is training for combat wherever you may find yourself. But you just learn how to basically control it. You breathe, you take deep breaths, you control it, you turn that fear into energy that you are productive with, rather than being, so afraid to move. So it's a good thing. You just control it. But yeah, there's fear there. It's just control it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Can we talk about was it 1987 where it didn't go very well?
Yep, 1987. So I left my previous assignment at Kirtland. I volunteered for a new unit that was opening there. It was in JSOC, in the Joint Special Operations Command. It was at that time was combat controllers, and pararescuemen came in there and developed what was called Detachment 4 at the time. Prior to that, it was Brand X. And then it changed names a few times. I know you hear some of the guys talk about the 2-4. So at that time, there was no special tactics teams, special tactics squadrons. So the joining together of the pararescuemen with the combat controllers, with Colonel Carney, who was a combat controller, his guidance and foresight created the special tactics teams that have evolved to where they are now. And so we would go and train and work with other units. And I was assigned to a SEAL team at Dam Neck, Virginia. We were doing a parachute jump, and we were on the different alert status for things as a combat unit. But so we still trained locally. We're going to do a parachute jump, and it was a free fall. This was, we're going to jump out and work as a group. You're going to basically controlled flying, right? You're gliding to the ground. So we jumped out of a Marine CH-46 at 13,000 feet, and the plan was to free fall to 3,500 feet and deploy our parachutes. So I guess when I talk about it, I tell people that I have two memories of this particular event: a conscious memory and an unconscious memory. And my conscious memory is clear. We wake up in that morning, we getting our gear ready. We leave the unit because we're going to a different drop zone that's nearby than where we were actually stationed. And we're driving over several trucks, pickup trucks. We stop and get coffee and donuts and regular health food like that. And so then we get over to the drop zone, and everybody's getting their gear ready. And we've got a helicopter. So, we do lift, multiple lifts. It's got a group of guys get on, they go up, they jump out, and they rotate with the guys on the ground. Now, myself, I was a paramedic. I was rotating with the other pararescueman that was there, Larry Yakamoto. And since you had to have the rules where you had to have one of the medics on the ground at a time, so we couldn't jump together. So he was on the ground when I jumped, and so I went up with my group, and 13,000 feet. We jump out. We're still in my conscious memory, right? So I remember being on the helicopter, looking out, seeing the earth down there, trying to see, okay, where's the drop zone, and see what's down there. And then my conscious memory picks up several days later in the hospital in ICU, where I'm trying to talk. I can't talk. I'm writing with a pen on paper because of the tubes and everything that are in my throat. I remember asking the doctor, am I blind or is my neck broken? And so that's where my conscious memory picks up. But my unconscious memory had to occur right at the time of the accident, because I don't remember jumping. and I don't remember the accidents. What happened was we jumped out at 13,000 feet and we were free fell down at 3,500 feet. We all have altimeters. Some are on different parts in their helmets or on my wrist. Mine was on my wrist. And then at like 4,000 feet, we break off in our group and we separate so we all could open our parachutes in our own airspace. And so this was my 90th jump, my 90th free fall. So I wasn't, scared and didn't know what to do. I was comfortable. I enjoyed it. It was fun. So I expect that I was doing everything that I have done on my previous jumps, like my 89th jump and on before that. So I would have 3,500 feet, deployed my canopy, which was a shoulder mounted ripcord handle, pulled it, parachute open, look up, make sure it's open. And, but what I do remember at that time is seeing my body on the ground with a couple of guys next to me, Dave and Bobby, and I'm not in my body, although I feel like I'm in my body. It's weird. So I'm not putting it together that I've, in my mind, I don't think that I've had a parachute accident. I don't know what it is. I'm just, my body's there and I'm surrounded by a light. It's like, if I describe it like a 40-watt light bulb, a low light embracing me. And that light is energy, it's love. And it is the most peaceful, embracing, loving feeling I've ever felt. But over an area that I would say is over my right shoulder area, although I'm not in my body, it just feels weird because I'm moving, like my consciousness is what's moving my soul. I'm moving away from my body. And there's in this very, very bright area are three figures. And I assume them to be human figures. I can't tell who it is. It looks like they have some type of a hooded gown or something, but there's three figures and the light behind them is so bright, I can't tell who it is. I'm going towards them and I know they're telling me they are there to meet me. And I don't understand to meet me, but I know I'm going to them. And when I get almost to them and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to see who this is. And I hear a voice clear to me right now as it was then. It's time to go now. And then it kind of gives me that realization I have a choice. And I say, God, I'm not ready to go yet. And I have those million feelings, thoughts, lessons, whatever pour into me. And I turn my head away from that bright area. And then next thing I know is that waking up in ICU. And 18 months later, many surgeries later, I started jumping again.
That's incredible, man. It's so profound. And so for the audience's sake, you've then used that experience to inspire other people to overcome their injuries and just generally their state of mind.
I never set out to do that, to inspire anybody to overcome things, but I have learned from what some people have told me, the things that they've been through, and I've talked to different people and it relaying that type of story and my experiences from the accident and what I went through to recover and to get my job back has helped others in some way to realize that they can overcome their own issues, whether it be physical or whatever it may be in life. So it makes me feel good that I can do that.
That's powerful stuff. So on a slightly lighter note, but the last time we spoke, you told us an amazing story about the RNLI. Would you mind just touching back on that because I love that.
All right, the Royal Naval Lifeboat Institute. Um, so they did come and save us a couple of times while we were doing our water work out in the North Sea. So there were two instances. Um, the one instance that I was on, we did our jump. We parachuted out into the water, into the North Sea, and the boat that was there, we had our own boat assigned to us for the unit, and it picked us up. There was, I don't know, maybe four of us on the jump, picked us all up, and then the boat lost all power. There was no electrical power. We were dead in the water, and the 130 was still overhead. We had radio contact with them, and so they circled, waiting to see if we were going to be okay. They dropped us some life rafts, which, again, I hate to say it, but they missed us. And so then we couldn't get the boat started. It was nothing we could do with it. So they relayed a message to the rescue center there for the Royal Naval Lifeboat Institute, and they sent a boat out and towed us in. And so that was one of them. And then almost the same thing happened another night. I don't know, much later, a few months later. Since then, they got rid of that boat and got a new boat. But I had an incident. One of the guys, called him X, Companza Mantri, who was a Laotian. He was on the team, and he wasn't able to be picked up because the boat, he wouldn't swim to the boat, which he's like, he wanted, he was like, hey, pick me up. And they said, we can't. The boat's dead in the water. Swim to us. And so they had a bit of a disagreement who was doing what, but they drifted further and further apart. And again, the Royal Naval Lifeboat Institute had to come out and tow the boat in again. And X couldn't be found. We couldn't find him until the next day. He had swam his way to Felixstowe, and he was on the beach when he got picked up. So it was a team effort. We worked together. The Royal Navy worked with us to save us.
Well, you were was it so Mildenhall, very near Lakenheath, isn't it? Stone's throw from
Yeah,
Lakenheath, if I'm
yeah.
if
So
I'm
that first assignment, that was at Woodbridge,
right.
and I left. I left there on another assignment, and I was years later, and then I was also. I was a scuba instructor at the Special Forces Scuba School in Key West, Florida. Which was part of the pipeline for all the combat control and pararescue trainees that were hopeful to be pararescue or combat control would have gone through there. And it was in '95 when the Chief Master Sergeant that managed our position asked me if I would go back to England. And of course, I accepted it. But this time, the unit had moved from Woodbridge to Mildenhall. And at that time, at Mildenhall was a special tactics team. It was not just a pararescue team. It was special tactics, pararescuemen, combat controllers, and that wasn't all it was made up of. There was a lot of other people in there that made it possible for us to do our jobs. With intel and supply and support and administrations, all of those people, everybody is on the team, and what they do was enabled us to be able to do our job. So, but yeah, that was Mildenhall. That was '95, and I was there from middle of '95 till towards the end of '99. Most of our time was spent in rotations to San Vito, Italy, Brindisi, which was right there in San Vito. Brindisi was on the coast, and San Vito, the base was inland a couple of miles, maybe 10 miles. And that was stood up as a joint task force for Army, Navy, and Air Force that was involved in what was going on in former Yugoslavia, Bosnia Herzegovina, and Serbia. And so we did our rotations there. Pretty much my whole time I was there.
And whilst you were at Mendenhall, you had an unusual sight in there, didn't you? I know you mentioned.
I did, and I never said anything to anybody. I was like, I couldn't prove it was anything. I didn't even know what it was, other than just a light in the sky, in the night sky, that I thought was an unusual light. But we had been at a pub and we had had a few beers. Well, nobody's going to believe anything I say anyway. But I did think it was to me, it was like, well, that's not normal. But I only saw it quickly the one time and wasn't able to say, hey, did you see that to anybody, or look at that? It was there, and then it was gone. And like, okay, just chalk that up as something that I saw that I thought was unusual.
We jumped into JSOC earlier on, and it's JSOC's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's something that came up quite recently with I think it was Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She was in Congress. She was talking to, I think, a representative from Department of Energy, and she asked the question: is JSOC involved, or are you linked to JSOC in terms of protecting sites? And she's the representative of Department of Energy sort of didn't really answer the question, so she asked it again really directly, and then she said yes.
Does the DOE currently work with JSOC in order to handle security measures?
We work with all of the security entities around the federal government. We're part of an overall all-of-government effort on both cyber as well as national security.
Do you guys work with JSOC? Yes or no?
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
And it felt like people in the sort of UFO world were like, "Whoa, hang on, what's JSOC?" No one's really heard of JSOC. Certainly, from our side of things over this side of the pond. And you were in JSOC, so I appreciate. It's a while back and things change, and perhaps there's certain things you can and can't talk about. But what is JSOC? Are you able to just give us an idea of JSOC and what sort of role did they perform, and are they likely to perform nowadays, do you think?
Wow, that's a lot. I would say
There's 10 questions in one. Go.
When I was there early on, early 80s, had not been established at that long, which was something that was built out of the attempted rescue of the American hostages, and when the Iranian embassy was overrun. And at that time, there really was not a unit that brought all the forces together to work together for a common mission. After Vietnam, money had been taken away from the military for different special projects and things, and so was kind of left without a real special operations force. And so after that, the government and the military saw the need to really build a unit that was able to talk together. Everybody that would go out would have radios that could talk to each other, or whatever they were doing. And it was, as far as the mission, it was, just everybody in there had regular combat trained skills, whether they were special forces or SEALs or pararescue men or combat controllers or the others that you hear about in there. I mean, it takes a whole lot more than just those guys to make the mission happen, but it was just kind of just more specialized training to do the job. Back then we really didn't even say the word JSOC, so it was quite new and it wasn't talked about. People didn't know much about it as they do now, where it's mentioned quite freely in news and different people talk about them, because It is a little bit more of a selection process to get into the units, and it's just more specialized.
So would it make sense then? Well, the first question really is, were you involved in recovery of any UFOs or as part of JSOC back in those days? And if that's a no, is it the sort of team that would do it nowadays? Because I think that's what Anna Paulina Luna was sort of hinting at, was that perhaps
Well,
they're involved
the,
in crash retrievals.
and the answer to that is no. Um, and would you say, would they be the type of people that could do it, or the type of units? Um, you could take anybody in the military and train them, whether they're in that unit or another unit, for a special mission to go and do it. Now, in the pararescue units, our our name used to be Aerospace Recovery and Rescue Squadron, and we would recover space hardware. We were trained to do that. We had units that would recover satellite camera stuff that was dropped from space. A team in Hawaii was primarily responsible for that. With the advances in technology, those things are no longer required for that type of stuff, but you can always train to do that, whether it's in a unit. Now, if anybody is doing that with JSOC, I don't have any knowledge of it.
What does recruitment look like for a something like JSOC then? Is it something I can't imagine they have a jobs fair where they're advertising roles. Is it something where they come and find you, or you're assessed along your career and you sort of get pulled out, or
Um, well, you're always assessed to through your career, but there are, there you want to um, move in your respective jobs, whether it's special forces or SEALs or um, pararescue, combat control, or intel, or medics, doctors. So the unit is there and it has a need for each of those type groups, and they have certain um, training requirements to get to those teams. So, you may be on whatever team you're on out there, and if you want to go to the unit, you apply through your respective units, and you will go through a tryout, and you'll just be really evaluated on your skills for your respective jobs at a high level. How well do you perform your job? Just because you have been trained at one time doesn't mean you've kept up and continued with those skills. And so when you get there, you want to make sure that you're capable of doing your particular job. And you're not you're doing the same things you did in your job in the regular community, but now you're at a unit that you is called on for special tasking.
amazing, amazing. So to turn it back to the weird side again then. So in 2004 you had a definitely a strange encounter. Would you mind talking us through that a little?
Yep. So 2004, I was medically retired from the Air Force in 2002, and I was in Florida. I stayed there. I was working at the time for Northrop Grumman, worked as an instructor. Uh, have a different in an air operations center. You have different representatives for each of the different type skills, whether it's fighters, bombers, Navy, Army, Air Force, and everybody as a representative for their jobs. So I was in there as a combat search and rescue instructor, and I did that for about a year, and then I moved to Minnesota, where I am now, and my ex-wife, her and her parents had some property up in Wisconsin. And one summer, late summer, I went up there with her father, two of her uncles, and her brother, and myself. But the plan was to go up there and pretty much they're big hunters. White-tailed deer is a big part of their family traditions, and so we were up there to prep the campsites and prep the areas where the hunting areas. And we were in the evening. We were outside around their little campfire. Myself, brother, father, and two uncles, and we'd been out there for a little while, and suddenly I realized that I felt like I was paralyzed, like I had sleep paralysis, like just like if you were waking up and you knew you were sleeping, but you were trying to wake up and you deep dream or whatever, and you just couldn't move. And I had that sensation. I was just felt paralyzed, but I knew I was kind of, it was blurry, but I was like, I'm awake, like what's going on? And I was like a sensation I was trying to fight my way out of and wake up. And I don't know how long that lasted. And then suddenly I felt like I was released from the grip of that paralysis. And I realized I felt kind of disoriented, but I realized at the same time that there is a light that's above me, shining straight down on us as a group. It was just like if you held a flashlight up and you could see the beam and where the circle was on the ground. And my first thought was, what's going on? It must be a helicopter. I'm thinking that way out here, maybe it's a police helicopter. And I thought, no, it can't be. It can't be a police helicopter. It's too far away. But I'm thinking, well, I should be feeling some wind. I should be hearing something. I have like almost 2,000 hours of flight time, helicopters in them and under them with all the work we did. I know what it feels like to be under a helicopter. And that's all I can think. This hovering light must be a helicopter, but there's no wind, there's no sound. And I look at the other four guys that are there, and I'm thinking, they must hear or see. They're not moving. They look like they are not moving. And then I'm like, I'm trying to sort it out and figure out what's going on. And then it's like the light begins to move over the circle that I'm in. It's moving like it was moving. And then I look up and the light, it blinked right off. And we're plunged back into darkness except for the fire. And I can see an object moving away. It's total dark. There's no sound. There's no wind. And I can see where the stars behind it are blacked out by it. So I know it's an object that's there. And I'm trying to focus and see it. And it was maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and then it was gone. And it took me several weeks to like just get over that feeling of like what's going on. I didn't know anything about reporting agencies for UFOs. I kept trying to get online and see if anybody reported anything. But later I found out through Sabrina, who was also, when she got out of the Air Force, became a field investigator with MUFON. She did some research at that time period in that area and said there were some other reports of someone that had reported a UFO. So maybe that was the same one. I don't know, but that was, I don't know what it was, but it was a very weird event.
Would you say that was, I mean, obviously you've had time to kind of let that process now. Have you got any feelings about whether it was like a positive experience, a negative experience, or where's your head at with what happened?
Well, I have wondered. I have wondered why and what was wondered what it was. I have no idea what it was. And looking at the different stories that people talk about their abductions and different things, and I wonder, was I abducted and put back? Was I almost abducted? Was I just they shine the light on me with some phaser like Dr. McCoy said, oh yeah, he's good, he's not good, he's good. Okay, let's go, we'll find somebody else. So, I don't know if that was an evaluation. I don't know what it was, but I'm still here. I think I'm still here. I can't prove it, right? But so I guess it wasn't a bad experience. I don't think it was, but I still don't know what it was. But
It sounds pretty profound. Did the other people that were there as well, did you talk to them about it? Did they see anything themselves or experience anything? Or
I
did you not share with them?
I did share it with them, and they said they felt nothing, knew nothing. So, like I said, when I did initially come out of that uh, feeling of paralysis and being disoriented, I looked at them and they weren't talking and they weren't moving. So I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay, let's jump on to I think 2019 Panama City. I'm keen to learn more about this one, and I know that this is one that you got footage of and photos and stuff. So are you able to sort of talk us through that case?
Yep, yep, I certainly
What happened
can.
there?
I so I started doing a little bit of speaking, public speaking, and I was asked to do public speaking um, down in Panama City Beach area. They had a facility nearby, Florida State University, and I had gone down there for that. And so I was I was down there for a couple of days. I was staying. They put me up in a nice hotel and it's right on the beach. And I was one on this particular day. The I was going to do a presentation that evening. So in the day, I'm just kind of relaxed. I'm exercising. I'm doing push-ups on the balcony, and I look out and I catch a glimpse of a very distinct bright object, and it was coming in. It was going in and out, not out of my sight. Just the light itself was bright, then not bright. So I looked at it for a second, and my curiosity was like, "Is that an airplane?" And then I was like, quickly in my mind, I said, "No, it can't be an airplane. It's hovering there somehow. It's stationary. An airplane that we know as an airplane would have to be moving." And then I thought, well, it must be a helicopter. And I looked at it for a few more minutes, and I just could see there was some kind of movement to it. And it was the light, the brightness, the intensity was bright and low. And I thought, no, it doesn't look like a helicopter either. I said, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to take some pictures. So I grabbed my phone and I took about 30 pictures of it, a little bit of video. And then I put that down because I had another camera, but I took those initially because I said, well, I want to take it now, I can see it, because when I go to get my other camera, it may be gone. So I went and I grabbed my other camera, which was fairly new. It was a Sony A6000, had a 210 millimeter lens, which was, I guess, in the camera world of zooming in on things, it wasn't, really massive, but it did have quite a bit to it, as it turns out. So I started taking pictures, and I wasn't switched on to think I'm looking at something that's amazingly weird. So I didn't focus on it completely. In my mind, I still was rehearsing a little bit, thinking over for my speaking gig that night. And I was also continuing to do push-ups. And so I would do a set of push-ups. Then I would look up and say, whoa, it's still there. Take some more pictures. Took more pictures. did more push-ups, took more pictures, did more push-ups. So I did this for about an hour. And I was rehearsing, and every time I looked back up, it was still there. And I said, well, getting into the afternoon, I'm gonna have to leave. So I'm gonna have to take a shower. And I took a shower. I got out and it's still there. So I took a few more pictures. And I guess during that time period, I remember one time I remember thinking, I wonder if it knows I'm looking at it, whatever it is, something that was like, I wonder if this knows I'm looking at it. I still wasn't switched on to think, oh, this is some amazing unidentified object that I got to capture on film for historical purposes. But right after that, the object seemed to get a little bit closer to me when I had that thought. And then I went back to my push-ups and taking pictures. And then later, when I was thinking that I got to leave, I hope this thing does something or hurry up and leave. Because I don't feel bad about not taking pictures. And that was about the same time when it left. And so that night I went in there was some other military people there, some officers, lieutenant colonels. And asked them, I said, hey, you guys see anything? Any reports of UFOs? And no, nobody had any reports of UFOs or anything. And so I didn't say anything more about it. But from my vantage point, when I was taking those pictures, I was on the 22nd floor of this hotel. And I was looking around on the ground to see if anybody was down there looking up at it. And there was a lot of people that were on the beach and around the pool. They were playing volleyball and whatever games they were playing, but nobody was looking up in the air. So I thought, well, I guess it's just me. I'll take these pictures. And so that's what I did. And then I didn't think a lot more about it after that night. About 2 weeks later, I downloaded the cameras or the pictures from the camera to my laptop and started zooming in and looking at them. And then it was like, what the F is this? Oh man, this is, I don't know what it is, but it was really weird. So I started wondering what is this? Have I captured a super top secret project? And if so, I don't want to share it to the world if it's, a top secret project. I was military, I had top secret clearances. I feel like I'm a patriot. I don't want to let these secrets out if it's something I captured. And so I talked to a friend that was active duty, told him what I had, because I didn't know anything about a reporting system. I didn't know anything about a Pentagon UFO unit. I didn't know anything about MUFON or any of this stuff. And so they said, well, send us the pictures, send me the pictures, and I'll get somebody to look at them, an analyst, trained analyst. And so I did. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, they said, well, the person that looked at them said they didn't know what it is. And they're going to send the pictures to another organization that has a better capability to analyze things. I said, great, because I'm excited. I want to, okay, what is it? Tell me what it is. I want to know. And I didn't ask what unit it was. I was like, okay, another unit. Okay. They never told me what unit. I never asked who the analyst was, anything. And again, about 3 weeks later, I'm like, what'd they say? And they came back. So finally, they said it's a weather balloon and your camera has an anomaly. And I was like, oh man, that story's the same thing that they've been saying since, 50, 60, 70 years. You hear weather balloon from, Roswell. So I said to myself, well, I don't believe it. And I don't know what my next step was going to be, but I thought, well, I'm going to put a report out. I'm going to put them in a book, self-publish a book with them. That's what they say. It's a weather balloon. So I did a couple of things. I reached out to a few different people. The pictures really are hard to believe that it's actual real. I did talk to a couple of people. One guy, Blumenthal, we shared a couple emails, but there really was nothing more than me saying this. It wasn't something he really wanted to get into, I guess, at that point. Talked to the only person that answered me back, like I said, was Nick Pope, and he said he didn't know what they were. And I said, well, I'm going to put them in a book. And he said, well, that's good. Maybe it'll create some interest, and somebody that knows something about it will come out of the woodwork or something to that effect, he said. So he also said that I should submit a report to MUFON. So I looked up that, and eventually, at the same time, I think I also was, TTSA was big in the news at that time. And I thought, well, they got to be the unit to send these things to. So I sent them a couple emails, and they told me they didn't want the pictures. They weren't ready to take pictures. They were trying to build a base where people could submit things, but at that point they didn't have it ready for that. But I could invest if I wanted to. So I said, all right, thanks. And then I went to the new FARC, I think, new UFO organization. So I submitted a report with them, and I submitted a report with MUFON. So again, MUFON assigned Sabrina Robb to the case. She was ex-Air Force security forces, and then a launch control officer on the nukes. And so she contacted me. We talked about it. I met her, showed her pictures, showed her video, and she was like, I believe you 100%. It's unusual, it's real. And so she sent pictures to an individual to have them analyzed, because she didn't like take my word for it. She's going to make sure the pictures are real. And this person she sent them to was a prior military, prior Army. I was a pilot. I don't know if he did what else he did as far as intel or anything, but he was a pilot. And then she also had sent a couple pictures to Lou, who contacted her wanting to know about them. And I don't know whatever happened with that. She also introduced me to Rich Hoffman with SCU, who we communicated back and forth. I sent him pictures. He was going to analyze them. He sent me emails, told me he was sorting through them based on the metadata. And he actually sent me an email one time with a picture of the hotel I was in and asked me to identify the room and the angle and the direction I was looking. And we discussed that on the phone, and then he just stopped talking to me. And he stopped talking to Sabrina. So I don't know what happened there. I always thought that, well, maybe he found something he's not allowed to talk about, and that's why he shut down communications. I haven't talked to him to this day, so that was 2019. And so then after that, I just said, well, can submit a report to these organizations. They don't go anywhere. They go into a folder of archives, and nobody ever hears from them again. So I'm gonna self-publish a book with these pictures in them and my story, my report. And believe it or not, and it's out there. That's my report. And that book that you have is the first one. That's the volume 1. I published that one in, I think, August of 2020. And then after the book came out, the individual that Sabrina had introduced me to from the Army, he asked me if he could look at the pictures and use whatever software to enhance them. He said, this is the software. He said, I'm not changing the pictures. I'm just enhancing them the same. He said, his words were, it's the same software the FBI uses to enhance evidence. And so he did that with the pictures, and they're much clearer. I posted many of them on my X account, and I also put them together in another book, volume 2. And this one is a much bigger hardback with the pictures, which made it more expensive. I don't make money on that. The publishers and the distributors do. I make just over $1 on a book if it sells, but so I'm not getting rich on them. But it is my report, and it's not archived in a round file somewhere that nobody will ever see again.
Yeah. This is just for people listening, watching in. This is not a balloon, Scott. I was talking to Tom about this earlier on, and obviously we've passed it over to Peter Osborne to have a look at and do some enhancements as well. And he's done a few bits and pieces, still working on it. We're hoping to put something out over the next couple of days with the other bits and pieces. He's still got some stuff that renders. Like one of the images was like a gigabyte or gigabyte and a half or something just for one TIFF image. Ridiculous. Huge files, but fascinating stuff. So just to sort of rewind slightly, you mentioned Lou, just for the people listening, that's Lou Elizondo. Am I right in thinking that had sort of got sight of this previously? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sabrina is friends with Lou.
Okay, cool.
I spoke to him on the phone, and we've never met.
Okay, got you. And so when you sent it, when they said they sent it off to a sort of team, I guess around that sort of time, we're probably looking at ATIP winding down, UAP task force winding up maybe. So it could have been potentially that team, but as you say, you're not sure. What sort of speeds were we talking? So we've got some images on the screen for people to have a look at this. When you spotted it, so it was remaining still for quite a while, and then when you said it sort of left, did it shoot off? Was it at speed?
Yeah, so when I saw it, and it remained pretty much stationary in that section of the sky. I mean, it was moving around, and it was so odd. You can see in the still pictures how it progresses. You can see it on the video, but it's not quite as clear. But you can see how the light is a low intensity, and it changes areas, and it changes colors, and the intensity kind of takes over the whole object, and then it disappears, and then it returns very quickly, quicker than a second, into another shape. And so it wasn't really massive speeds that are so out of, Mach 100 or whatever. It was just stationary up there. But the speed seemed to be in that circular itself. It seemed to be, the speed was just the way it would spin, seemed to be just incredible speed. And then when it kind of left, it seemed like it was just getting further and further to a point, and then it was gone. It didn't appear to be like it was just a massive speed like the other event in 2004 that just boom, it was gone. This one just got to a point, and then it was gone. So I don't know what kind of speed that was. That's mind speed. That's a thought. Boom, it's gone.
On the subject of thought, then, because I find it really interesting what you were saying about this sort of consciousness interaction. Just talk us through your head when you felt like, is this thing aware that I'm looking at it, and that.
I probably should have put more thought into it, even if I had that little bit of a thought. So I wondered, okay, is this object? So for some reason, I even had that thought. I don't know why even thought came into my mind to think that, but to think, is it aware that I am taking these pictures? And then I thought, well, okay, I think, we got an agreement. I'm going to keep taking pictures. And then that was kind of the agreement. But I guess in my own mind thinking, yep, okay, it knows I'm taking them, and it's okay with it because it's still here. And I didn't try to have any more type communications with it other than just observing it.
But it's for somebody that's so experienced looking at conventional vehicles, that's not exactly a normal thought that you would have had, presumably, for a helicopter or any other kind of aircraft.
Oh no, exactly. It was quickly realizing it was not a conventional aircraft, and I mean, I've seen fixed wing with propellers, 130 types or smaller types. Um, More commonly back then, F-15s, F-16s, even to see an SR-71 in the day flying. So I have seen a wide assortment of aircraft, and quickly said, "Oh, that is not a conventional airplane." Um, and when I did watch it, to think maybe it's a helicopter, could see the just intensity of the light, and didn't know what it was, but it was like, whatever it is, it's not a helicopter either. And I started taking pictures.
I just had to look up what an SR-71 was on Google because I saw Tom's face light up when you said
Jimmy.
it. Now I realize. That's incredible. Yeah. Scott,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk about people that have, certainly people that I've spoken to, who have, they're involved in a lot of meditative types of lifestyle. They meditate, I guess. There's yoga. There's people that do breath work and all sorts of different things, and they seem to. It feels like to me anyway. And there's no, I can't prove it. There's no sort of science around it that I'm aware of. But they tend to be quite lucky, and I don't know if that's just because that's who I'm talking to, or if there's something there, some kind of connection. Do you find yourself as particularly spiritual? Do you meditate a lot? I mean, are you out there running, clearing your head, doing breath work?
Um, I have since then. In the last couple of years, I've done some. Uh, where I was living previously, I did a little bit more, and I felt like questions that I asked were answered with unanswers. Sometimes it was like, I want you to visit me. I want to uh, go inside the craft. I want to be there. And the one thing I heard is that I didn't was you don't know the rules yet. And I thought, well, what are the rules? And that was during one of my times of meditative state. I guess I would say, as far as religious, I grew up in Florida. There was many Baptists and Southern Baptists in the family, extended family. So I went to church a few times with grandparents, my mother. It wasn't an every Sunday or Wednesday thing. And you get the biblical stories, and when you're a child and you don't think twice about it, that's the way it happened. Whether it was Noah or the seas being parted or whatever it was. Those are the stories you hear. And for me, I would hear it's like, yep, that's the way it was. You get older, you start and you get around into not just your own area where you grew up, but you get to experience other cultures, other people, other countries, and you see the different beliefs that everyone else has, and you think, well, how can mine be the only one that's right? I think we're all right. There's all, but there's one God, and as far as whatever you believe that to be, the more religious or more spiritual, I would say I lean more on that spiritual side. I feel more comfortable outdoors, whether it be in the mountain climbing or in the woods or in the sea. I mean, I feel more connected there than I do inside a building, in that type of environment.
That's
so I
interesting.
think the spiritual is there. I think I have my own sort of relationship. Thinking back to the accident with the three figures, it's an awareness that there is more after death. Maybe it's different for each individual a little bit. I know how I have another friend that had a near-death experience that terrified him. Terribly terrified him. He's talked to me about it, and the things he told me, it would terrify me too. But mine was not like that. So but so I guess that leans more into my spiritual side there. But there is more there, and be a good person.
Yeah. It's a good message. It's a good message. Good message to end on. Scott, it's been awesome. I really, really appreciate you spending time with us today and talking us through, and fascinating. Your life is just fascinating. I mean, we could dig into every single element. I mean, we were talking before, we got carried away last time. We just wanted to hear all of your stories and just life in the jumping out of helicopters and airplanes and stuff. I just, wow.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, that's a
it
hell
was
of
a
a
great
life.
job. It was a great job. I'd do it all over again if I could. The motto that others may live. We certainly don't want to go out there and die, but that others may live is we're going to put ourselves in whatever situations need be to um, bring that person home safely, whether it be in combat with a downed air crew or um, pilots or astronauts, that are coming down in the capsules now, and they did as they did before, or mountaintops or middle of the ocean with cruise liners. So it was awesome. I'd love to do it again.
Well, look, thank you for your service, Scott. I mean, that's, it's it's life and death stuff, isn't it? Genuinely, people say life and that's you don't get any closer than that, I think. That's scared the life out of me just the thought of it. The pictures of your parachute accident were just when I first saw that on the screen, I'm like, I'm not, how you survived that, and then in the face of adversity, I guess going out there and, as Tom said earlier on, using that to help other people and get past it and get back out and jump out of planes
And
again.
that may have been the reason that I did survive, to put that message out there, to help where I can. In that sense, just I don't put myself on a pedestal as an example. I'm an ordinary guy that had an extraordinary job, and it's just like in our job, the different missions that we get, it could be anybody out there. It's just we have a rotation, whether it be an alert cycle or rotations, and some guys do things that it's like any of us could do it. It just happened to be your turn to
Yeah.
go out there and do it.
Yeah. But even so, I mean, just the thought of, I mean, people like when I see, I follow quite a few people on Instagram who are very motivational and encourage me to eat less McDonald's, drink less toffee lattes, and try and run. I mean, I will start soon.
Do you,
So
do you
it's
follow?
very,
Do you follow
very.
David?
Yeah, I was just about to say now, Dave, before we go, and before we sort of end this, we need to ask about. So you lived with, or David Goggins lived with you, is that right?
For a short time he came. So David, um, so I met David in 91. I think he was maybe 14 years old. So, in the Air Force, we have combat search and rescue team, pararescue. Now, in the civilian world, we have what's called the Civil Air Patrol, which is the civilian arm of the Air Force to go out and help with rescues or even conduct the rescues on their own. And then if it's something that needs more equipment or bodies or whatever, they will, can include active duty in it. So the Civil Air Patrol has a program just like the Scouts, maybe the scouting world, the Boy Scouts or whatever, the Girl Scouts, and they have a cadet program for young people that have an interest in joining the Air Force. And so this gives them some awareness, some experience, and lets them feel a little bit about what it would be like to grow up and go on to be in the Air Force. And so they they have a couple of programs that they run, summer programs that the Pararescue is involved in, with helping to instruct them in a summer course. And there's a couple of phases with it. There's a basic phase and an advanced phase. And the basic phase is held in different different locations. And so I was at Kirtland Air Force Base as an instructor. And that particular year, I volunteered to go out and assist with those Civil Air Patrol courses. And David was one of the young cadets at that course. And, you know, people's lives cross at certain times in their lives when it needs to. And I was, it wasn't like I was sadistic, but I would do a PT, physical training session with those youngsters, those kids, 14, 15, 16 years old in the morning. And we'd do calisthenics and run. And so I hit him pretty hard with it for about an hour, and David loved it. And he decided that he wanted to join the Air Force and be a pararescueman. And he tracked me down. It's all in his book. He talks about it. He tracked me down a couple of years later. And at that time, I was living in Key West, Florida. I was instructor at the scuba school. And he asked if he could come down there and I could teach him how to swim and what he needed to do for get into pararescue. And so he came down there for a short while and stayed with me and my family in Key West. And you kind of know the rest is history if you know his story. But yeah, so we're still very close to his family. His mother and I are very close friends. And
wow, he was in early. he was living it from his teens. I didn't realize it was that early. Wow. Yeah, I mean, he's an incredibly motivational guy. As are you, Scott. As are you. Wow. Well, look, we've taken up loads of your time, and I really, really, really do appreciate it, Scott. Hopefully, we'll stay in touch, and we'll talk again in the future.
Oh, definitely stay in touch. Hope to.
Definitely.
And
we'll
gotta get back to England. I gotta have a real pint of bitter.
Definitely, definitely. Well, if you are, we'll meet up and I'll buy you around.
Yeah, it's been a real
Definitely.
privilege, Scott. It's a real honor to get
Hey.
to know you, mate. It's fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
Take care then, Scott. Speak soon.